Boy, do I have the story for you. I have been meaning to film this video for many months, but I never had a proper allotted time where I can just tell and explain everything that happened in regards to the Cigar Swindler. We encountered a scam artist, a con man of the cigar world. There's so much to it. In fact, even before filming this video, and I think that's probably why I put it off for so long, had to make some notes, had to compare notes with my boyfriend as well, who is supporting behind the camera. Obviously, I would love to sit here and smoke a cigar with you all, but frankly, there is just so much information that I want to give you. This was around the time that we just started smoking cigars, at least 1.5 years at this stage. So I'd like to think that in present day, I wouldn't have been taken down this garden path. Thankfully, we emerged relatively unscathed from this individual, and perhaps he's still out there swindling cigars, whiskies, or other fine things in life. This story is not just one of deceit. There is conning money, cheating, family wealth, even Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson were all involved. So I do hope that you stick around for what is an unbelievable story, frankly, of how we met the Cigar Swindler. The cigar community is pretty small, especially in London. So we're going to give fictitious names, who we are going to call, for the purpose of this video, Oscar. Meeting Oscar was a pretty chance event. If it wasn't for the event or the itinerary that we had for that one October afternoon, we would have never met him. Even had some of our friends today, our really good friends, were actually somewhat through this individual. So we have that to thank. We went to essentially this American Express dining event. It's a perk for platinum members. Essentially, they have some dining festivals. A lot of the major cities will showcase the best that they have to offer, and you'll essentially go on like a bar crawl of various restaurants. We found out that they released some tickets for the October event. I think all of them were around the St. James area, if I'm not mistaken. And for this one, we actually got bottomless sparkling wine. I think it was the Gusborne wines, which are absolutely divine, would highly recommend. It seems like really incredible value and a really great way to try out a lot of new restaurants that we hadn't frequented before. So myself and my boyfriend, we decided to do that for a date night. We started, I think it was at Franco's, and then I think we had to walk to a different restaurant, which was around 5 minutes away or something. Between the changeover of restaurants, we saw Davidoff on the way, and we thought, actually, we probably have, I think, 20 minutes or something like that to spare, because they need time to turn the tables and all of that. But that was actually where, by chance, we saw Eddie Sahaki in there. For a lot of you guys in the community, this is a big deal, because Eddie is one of the first faces you will see on YouTube, and obviously he and his dad were pivotal in setting up Davidoff. Bought a few sticks, but after that we just kind of like hovering around. We was like, wait, is that Eddie? Eddie was serving 2 customers at the time, and we had around maybe 5 or 10 more minutes left to go before we had to go to another restaurant. And you know, my boyfriend was like, yeah, I think we should probably go. And I was like, no, there is never going to be another time that we're going to bump into Eddie again. As I made a beeline to Eddie, I think I tapped him on the shoulder, said, I'm sorry to bother you, but we are huge fans and admirers of what you've done with Davidoff, of the impact that you've had in the cigar world and the community, and we just briefly wanted to say hello. But he said, oh no, he was making jokes. He was like, oh, I know these two for so long, right? And I must say, I highly recommend, if you see this man, if you see Eddie, do say hello. He actually really loves it, and he did tell us that it wasn't trouble. I think he's just very authentic on and off camera. And so he essentially introduced us to these 2 individuals. And one of those individuals was our dear Oscar. And then another one was his friend. What should we call him?
Danny.
Danny.
Oscar and Danny.
I think Eddie offered us to take a photo with him. And what he did was he maneuvered Oscar and Danny to help take the photo, which I felt so bad about. He was actually going to great pains to introduce the fact that Oscar had his own podcast and he had his own business. And Eddie just went on his podcast talking about cigars. Danny as well was also a big cigar enthusiast. I think he just made a big purchase as well. We left feeling really, really happy. We thanked them. Then we had our meal at the second restaurant, thinking what a lovely interaction, right? Fast forward maybe like half an hour, like almost an hour, to our third and final restaurant for dessert. We were on our way to the third one, and actually on the way to the third restaurant, we walked past Franco's, which actually has an outdoor terrace area. But guess who we see sat outside Franco's smoking cigars? Our dear friends, Oscar and Danny, of course. What is worth mentioning is that our ages are all pretty similar. So it wasn't this weird thing by which we were, saying hello to like 50 or 60-year-old men, which obviously there's no issues. You can make friends with whoever, but it made a lot of sense and it was very authentic. Got the impression Eddie was really introducing us because he wanted more people in our age range, in our demographic, to network, because there's not that many young folks, I suppose, in this kind of world. I think we spent about 5 or 10 minutes just chatting to them in Franco's while they was mid-stogie, and they actually invited us to sit down and smoke with them because they had just laid out a bunch of cigars that apparently Oscar was reviewing for his channel. We sadly had to decline because we did mention that we were on our way to the final restaurant, but of course we were very keen to exchange detail. We left Franco's feeling really happy that we found like-minded individuals, that we made some friends in a very organic fashion. We got Oscar's number actually, and we're just like, yeah, let's meet up, let's do something. We fast forwarded like a week or two. So we actually got invited by Oscar. He said, look, I'm actually going to meet Danny at Claridge's. It's one of our many spots. So why don't you come with us? Even the way I feel that it was set up, because I'm not sure if any of you are really that familiar with Claridge's or even like cigar lounges and hotels in general, but it's quite hard to find places, hotel chains that allow you to smoke. He basically made it out that he knew somebody, like a general manager, and was able to wangle us a spot that would usually take weeks to book, or maybe you're not even allowed to smoke cigars out there, but because he's such a seasoned customer, he got the in route. So already in our minds we're like, ooh, who is this guy? And he didn't have any social media or whatnot that we could find, because I'm not gonna lie to you, I was trying to look up what the podcast was called and I just couldn't find any information, but I was like, you know what, let's find out when we actually meet the guy again. We're smoking cigars, we brought our own, they brought theirs as well, and he was just showing us. I mean, this man had one of those, like, I think he maybe wore like a roll neck turtleneck top with like a trench coat.
Very old money.
Very old money, that's the word. Old money, quiet luxury. The thing that wasn't so quiet, which I will always have etched into my brain, is that this guy, Oscar at least, had this Goyard pouch. And in that pouch, he had all these cigars. And then I think he also had a notebook or something where he was writing the notes about cigars. So he was taking this like very seriously. Oscar basically told us his podcast was pretty big and successful. He had even managed to get the likes of, obviously, Eddie on, he got Kirby Allison on, and then he also got on some big names. We're talking Andrew Huberman, even also got Jordan Peterson on. For some reason, these footages had corrupted, and we were obviously very keen, and I think I even grabbed my phone to be like, what is this? And he's like, oh, well, my editor, he corrupted the footages, didn't back it up. And obviously in the retrospect, this seems quite fantastical, but I'm not gonna lie to you, this man had charisma, and because he had Danny with him, who was quite quiet actually, and I think later on we kind of figured out why, because Oscar was he was dominating the conversations, shall we say. I think Danny was just observing, and obviously he looked the part, he sounded the part, and given that we are two people going in with good intentions, we didn't have a reason to believe anything was up. And so it seemed very authentic, and so facts like that didn't seem to raise a red flag so much.
I would also add, the way we met, they essentially came at the recommendation of
Eddie. Yeah.
Right? So it's it's validation from a person of authority. So
there was no reason.
Could we not?
Yeah. To this day, I'm not quite sure if Eddie knew what was going on, but genuinely, Eddie is a lovely man, and I think when it comes to cigars, Oscar knew his stuff. Coming at the recommendation of a very reputable name in the game is something that held weight for us, and I would therefore, even as a lesson learned, of all of this is just make sure that you do your own due diligence as well, which we did shortly thereafter. But let me just tell you more of the things that we had learnt in that meeting. We know he has his podcast on. He also mentioned, actually, out of the guests, obviously we had big names like Andrew Huberman, Jordan Peterson. He also got on, or was in the works to get on, Andrew Tate. And at that point, I did think that doesn't pass a sniff test, because I think that during that time, he was going through his Romania trial. So obviously anything that was happening would have had to been a video call or a voice call at best. But I was like, do you know what? I'm not going to be rude and look it up now. I'll go home and do that. So yeah, big names. What does that mean? Again, we didn't care because we just wanted the friendship and the network really of like-minded individuals. And actually we had really great discussions, genuine discussions that were nothing to do with cigars even. We discussed what everybody's day jobs were, because this was his side hustle as well. And he actually mentioned that he has a lot of wealth that came from a business that he started and sold eventually to JP Morgan. From what I understand, he had a hedge fund at around, I think he was 23, 24, with some of his friends from university. He said he went to Oxford University. I think we may have asked him what college and whatnot, because we have friends from there, but he said something generic. And it was so successful, JPM bought it. Finance goes pretty much over my head, so I'm not one to question those kind of things, even though it did sound quite unbelievably good, right? But my boyfriend works in finance, so he asked some pretty pointed questions, not because of, you know, making any accusations or assumptions, but just because he's that kind of nerdy guy. Did you find those questions satisfactory at the time, or?
Not really. There were just a few things that seemed quite fantastical. Why would Goldman's buy a hedge fund?
Was it Goldman's? Oh, yeah, not JPM, sorry.
It was Goldman's. I gathered his hedge fund strategy, inverted commas, was just essentially trading Tesla or trading...
Oh yeah, that was the strategy, Tesla.
Or trading big blue chip names. And any company in general would only buy another business they don't have expertise in. So the biggest warning is, why would Goldman's buy a very plain vanilla hedge fund or product that they could probably start on their own?
That's a fair assessment, but again, I will caveat, that is the assessment of somebody who is in finance and is highly technical and knows the industry. For a layman like you and I perhaps watching, you would think, okay, maybe if he sold it for 3 million, however many millions, and what, so this podcast thing is like your full-time hobby, I suppose. And he just made it out that he was part of his old money heritage, and I think he even talked about the cars that he owned as well, and it was just casually dropped in conversation. So it wasn't like a hard sell, but I would say very high profile guest, plus the fact that he was basically retired, did strike me as a little bit odd. But I think given the recommendations from Eddie in that the very serendipitous event, or even on the streets, there's no way you can plan this stuff, right? Ultimately, I was going to do my due diligence and research at home. I think we must have spent like 5 hours with these guys. Did we even move locations? I can't even remember quite clearly.
No, we
were there the whole time.
Place, yeah.
That's wild. I mean, the chat was actually quite good, not gonna lie to you all. We shared a lot of things. For example, we learnt that obviously we have dogs, right? We have a dog, Pebbles. Obviously, if you're a dog parent, you want to talk about your dog all the time. And we learnt that Danny also had a dog. So we're like, oh my God, we're dog parents. We should do a dog meetup. And then Oscar revealed to us, you know what? I'm going to get a dog because he had a girlfriend. He basically said, because it was edging to Christmas, that he was going to buy her a greyhound called Echo. And I'm going to say that because, well, you'll know why. I'm only protecting the name of real people. Also, at the time, for our context, Pebbles was still quite young and we wanted to socialise her as much as possible. So we were so keen to meet people of our age group with the same interests, also with dogs. That is so hard to find. We were shortly thereafter going to go on a 2-week holiday actually to like Latin America, so we couldn't see them beforehand, even though I think they invited us out like the week after. And I just remember distinctly driving from Claridge's back home, we were having a chat about the podcast, and I was actually frantically looking it up on my phone, like on Spotify. Obviously that's where you pursue all your podcasts, right? And I found the name of it, and I wasn't even quite sure that it was the right podcast because I think it only had 19 reviews.
And the viewership was so low. Well, you couldn't see the views, but it's the subscriber count, which was a good indication. It was in like...
Or the review count was like 19.
Low, yeah, and the subscriber count was very low hundreds. Now you compare that to A Modern Wisdom or Diary of a CEO, which has guests like Huberman, Peterson.
Yeah, that was the first big red flag. And I will say, I definitely flagged this at the beginning. For somebody who got on the likes of Andrew Huberman or even Andrew Tate, he's only got 19 5-star reviews. Huberman would not even give 2 seconds of his time. I'm not saying that he wouldn't do it, but obviously he's a big name. He would be there to elevate you and you only, right? That struck me as a little bit strange. I suppose also when he was doing his podcast, I mean, yeah, he did have Kirby Allison on, that's true. He did have Eddie on, that's also true. But I did notice as a creator, the mic quality and things were not good. I don't think he actually had video, he only had audio, which
it wasn't very well produced.
With guests like Andrew, Jordan Peterson, they're usually quite high production. Or at least you would want a visual element, which I found kind of strange. But overall, we were like, look, this guy, he hasn't asked anything for us. He came rated from Eddie. He seems really nice. And actually, we're just here for vibes, really. So then I think maybe that day or the day after, you got an exciting text, didn't you? Would you like to tell us what the content of that text message was?
Essentially inviting us to a dining experience with a cigar experience, essentially a 3-course meal at a establishment that we frequented, more to add on that later.
Called Meat and Wine.
Yeah, called Meat and Wine. Mm-hmm. And a complimentary cigar smoking session, an introduction session on their balcony. All for £60.
That is crazily cheap. Even like a most basic cigar, we're talking like Last Call or a Flor de Carne, right? You are talking at least £15 a stick. And then what, a 3-course meal? That's in London gonna be at least the £60 a head, possibly more, and with drinks as well on top of that. This was a deal to be had. You mentioned Meat and Wine because, obviously aside from it being a fantastic restaurant, I had done a collaboration with them. So we were very excited to return because we were like, oh, we actually know the general manager and we'd met everybody there. It's super lovely. I think you'd actually mentioned that off the cuff, which I think he just kind of ignored. Okay,
well,
whatever.
Very silent. I thought he was going to be very excited. I screenshotted the collaboration you did on your public profile to him, saying, we've actually been there before, it's really nice, we like it. I thought it was going to get quite a visceral,
like, a mutual connection, you know?
Saying, oh, no way, but silent.
I think he mentioned a few of his other friends were coming, Danny was coming. We're like, oh, okay, so it's not going to be something that we're completely new to. And actually, something that is worth mentioning, I think at the Claridge's event, he gifted us a cigar each. The brand was owned by one of his so-called friends. And he mentioned he knew the owner or the owner's daughter. She was going to be at the event. She's one of the vendors there of the cigars that you will be tasting there. And it's a great way for you to network. In fact, she may even allow you to film some of the production work, or you might even be able to get her on your channel. So it was like a nice mutually beneficial win-win opportunity. And he was going to the trouble of organizing this fantastic event. It was like, well, it actually fits with the diary. So my boyfriend sent the money. I think it was bank transfer only. There wasn't a payment link. He actually even asked us, hey, if you know anybody else that would be interested in coming, you can feel free to invite them as well. I think it was maybe an intimate, like 20 person, 30 person of, you know,
very small exclusive event.
Yeah, but it was for enthusiasts. So if you were an enthusiast, like, you could definitely come. So we thought it was a bit weird. There was no payment link or anything, but we sent the cash. It was 120 quid, right? So not a crazy amount. And I think we were looking for confirmation of the date because they didn't iron out the date. They just said it's going to be roughly this week or that week on a weekend. So a week passes, maybe even longer than that. You and I start to get a little bit itchy. We're like, why is this guy not texted? And I think you shoot over a couple of chasers, was it?
It was either ignored or he stalled to say, let me get back to you. I haven't found out the date yet.
It was a couple of weeks after that, and then it was like, right, it's probably not happening, is it?
We were walking our dog with a very close friend of mine, and he called and essentially said they had a date in mind. The manager effed him, and so the date couldn't go ahead, and they're looking for a later date in January. And by that time, given the amount of chasing and flakiness, and also us with the benefit of hindsight, looking back on our experiences and everything, we thought it was incredibly suspicious and essentially demanded our money back.
And look, £120 is not that much money on the scale of things, but I think we realised after digging a bit deeper into the fact that he had no social media, we couldn't find any press online around his acquisition, the podcast thing, we did a bit more digging into that. I remember you and I had a conversation, I was like, there is a chance, a very high chance, he probably won't, and if that's the case, then we do not speak to him again, delete his number, we move on with our lives. And I think that Oscar realised, I guess, with the texting, that he decided to actually, by the grace of God, refund you.
It did take him a while, and again, a lot of persistent chasing.
Yeah.
But my tone, I think, hardened a lot more as the messages went on.
I guess for context, my boyfriend, he's an imposing man. If you were, for example, looking for a target to mug on the street, he's not one of them. Shortly thereafter, we get another text from somebody different.
It was Danny. He essentially asked whether we'd got our money back, and to which case we said yes, but it wasn't after a lot of teeth pulling and chasing.
And we were surprised to see that message because from what we understood, they were pretty good friends. They had even told us that they almost hung out every day, which we found to be a bit odd. We said we did get the money back. Obviously, naturally, you'd ask, did you? And he said, obviously, he didn't. Thereafter, he revealed to us that this was not the first time that he had taken money from people or from him. For Danny's case, he had taken thousands. And the things that we had learnt shortly thereafter shook us to our core. That is, I think, where I'm going to leave part one. And so I'm going to break this into a separate episode. So if you want to hear the rest of this, then stay tuned. But anyways, thank you as always for watching, and I'll catch you in my next one.